We are back for another episode of the Capes and Tights podcast right here on capesandtights.com. I'm your host, Justin Soderberg. This episode, we have David Hazan and Alex Moore, the creators of Death Drop, Drag Assassin over at Scout Comics. We talked that comic, a bunch of other things, and so much more right here on the Capes and Tights podcast. But before you listen, visit us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, as well as follow us, rate, review, all that stuff on Spotify, Apple, and all your major podcasting platforms, as well as go to capesandtights.com for so much more content to peruse throughout the week on articles, reviews, opinions, and so much more. But this episode is David Hazan, the 2019 winner of the Mad Cave Studios Talent Search and the creator of and writer of Nottingham and Monomyth over there at Mad Cave Studios, and Alex Moore, the illustrator on Death Drop, Drag Assassin, as well as done work for Dynamite's Red Sonja, as well as variant covers for a bunch of other books, including David M. Moore's Killer Queens, friend of the podcast as well. So enjoy this episode with David Hazan and Alex Moore of Death Drop, Drag Assassins. Thanks, everyone. Welcome to the podcast, Alex and David. How are you?
Good, thank you. Very excited to be here.
I can't complain though. I think David's had a much worse 24 hours than I have. So
it'll all be worth it. It'll all be worth it.
It's so much fun. So
it's 7 p.m. here on the East Coast of the United States, so it's actually fairly. And my son is at another person's house, so that's like I'm on like cloud 9 here because I've got like quiet.
Got a night to yourself, except you've got two people from the other side of the world here to talk about comics, apparently.
Well, what else did I do? So my wife and I were cleaning up earlier. She was doing something, and I go, "So well, maybe we could listen to music." I'm like, honestly, I just want the quiet in here. It's like it's weird to be like washing the dishes and not having someone tug on my leg. I'm like, this is great. This is amazing. No, I need to talk to some people. I need to talk to some fellow nerds and comic book geeks to get my fix in for the day here on Saturday as we record this. And I'm not going to say, I promised myself that I wasn't going to say, you guys are in the future, because I've heard so many people talk to people from Australia and other parts of the world who are like, oh my gosh, you're in the future. I was going to say that if my birthday's on Monday. So I was going to say that if we did this one day later, because I would have been like, hey, it's my birthday, but we'll refrain from that conversation on this. But we're here to talk Death Drop, Drag Assassin, amongst other things. But let's just talk who you two are. Like, let's start with that. Let's just find out, get a little bit of know about you two. How did either one of you want to start this off by how you got into comic books as a fan in the first place, and maybe how that moved into working in comics?
Alex, you want to go first?
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, how did I get into comics? I think when I was a very young, impressionable age, my dad got me into like Tintin, which I think is like one of the three sort of like classic gateway comic structs, because it's either like that, Calvins or Hobbes or Asterix. I think more if you're in like Europe and the UK. Yeah, so and then I sort of dropped off. And then I had a rather geeky friend in sort of like junior school who I think I just have a vague memory of watching way too many like hardcore 80s movies when I was probably like way too young. But he also had like fat stacks of like Spawn comics and Joe Mad stuff, like when he was doing his stuff at Marvel. And I was like, oh, this is very different from Boy Reporter and Small Dog having semi-wholesome adventures around Europe. I mean, I say that and they're like busting drug runners and things like that. So yes, that kind of like got me back in, and then I fell off again a bit. And then I happened to come across when I was much older, like a volume of like Black Sad. And it was just like, I found it in this bookshop, and it was this huge, like sort of, because it like, they originally printed them in the sort of like album size, and it was just like, I don't know, it was just like so cinematic, and the artwork was like completely blew me away. And it was sort of like, I mean, I'd always sort of like loved comics, but that sort of like, I don't know, kind of showed me like a whole other side of like what they could be. So yeah, that's in terms of the sort of reading. But yeah, I'd always been sort of like making them, and I think through podcasts and things like this, big shout out to the iFanboy podcast. I don't know if it's still going, but
I think it is,
because I didn't have a lot of friends who like talk comics and stuff like that. But I think through that, I sort of found things like, I don't know, all the big seminal ones. And then at the same time, I think I was like getting into Twitter, and through that sort of like networking with other writers and things like that. So I got involved with like doing some like small press anthologies, but then also occasionally you see people putting out these calls for art. So that's how I wound up doing a short for Red Sonja, Red, Black, White, and Red, and a variant cover for Killer Queens with David Booher, which I think is how David found me. And that's how we're here now. So the rest is history, as they say. That was a very convoluted yes, but hey, here we are. Okay.
So I guess it's my turn.
Yeah.
I got into comics probably about 4 or 5 years ago. When some very generous colleagues of mine got very sick of me talking about adaptations of comics in other media, and decided to sit me down and force me to read the source material. And they gave me a copy of Batwoman Elegy, and I kind of got hooked from that, and ended up, no pun intended, tumbling down the rabbit hole of like superhero comics, and from there I just kind of have an obsessive personality. So once I really like something, I want to know how to do it. And so I taught myself how to write comics. Um, Death Drop was actually the first comic I ever wrote. So coming back to it has been pretty surreal. But aside from that, as the wall behind you will attest, I also won Mad Cave's 2019 talent search. And so my first book, Nottingham, has now gone to 2 volumes, a spin-off, and a 3rd volume, which is in progress. And then my other book, Monomyth, just started this month. So
Yes.
lots of comics.
Lots
Busy.
of comics. Yes, exactly. Alex, I love how you mentioned David Booher. David Booher's on the podcast too. One of my favorite comic creators right now going on. And Killer Queen, I didn't know until I was doing research for this podcast that you had done a variant color cover for Killer Queen. So see, small world, things come together.
And might I say, David is also a very sweet, sweet man, and very welcoming to people in this community. I had a great time hanging out with him at New York Comic Con. He's just so lovely.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I would. David's always welcome to come back on the podcast for sure. But yeah, so I stumbled upon David. I stumbled upon you via Mad Cave and Melissa over at Don't Hide PR, who does a wonderful job promoting all of the people in the comic industry that Melissa works with. And I just felt to myself, like, anytime I ever need someone, I email her and I was like, hey, got a couple openings up, looking for some people. Who do you recommend that we talk to on the podcast? And it's kind of funny because I almost find that Melissa's also like my PR person, because she helps me get people to come on the. I'm like, wow, this is pretty easy. No, and then Melissa had mentioned you two would be willing to come on, or we should ask you guys to come on, and we. Then I started looking into Nottingham and all that stuff, and I fell down a rabbit hole myself into the fact that I had missed out on all these things, even though I'm a huge Mad Cave supporter and things like that. So it's great to have you both on to talk about these things and so on. But you mentioned, David, that Drag or Death Drop was the first comic book you wrote. Obviously, was not the first comic book that was published, because obviously it's coming out in June. But how did you connect with Alex to get this thing going in the first place?
Well, I'm pretty sure it was through seeing that Killer Queens cover and then I think I either messaged them on Twitter or emailed them through their website, something like that. Yeah,
I think,
just
yeah.
serendipitously happened upon their stuff, liked it, thought it was perfect, and here we are.
Is that how you remember it, Alex?
Yeah, no, I think it was an email, and then it sort of very quickly fell into like Twitter DMs, and God help me if I ever need to like search something for a previous conversation, but it's fine.
I find myself that during my
Blame
day job.
Elon.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. I talked to, I believe it was either Heather Antos or Liana Kangas about talking to people on the internet through Twitter, and I feel like the invention of Twitter has been, people can take it or leave it sometimes, but like I feel like there's some comic books that wouldn't exist if it wasn't for something like Twitter. Like there's just a connection between creators. We would not have some of these great comic books we have.
You just keep name dropping really lovely people. So I just want to I constantly want to gush about how like awesome Liana is as well. So
It was funny. I didn't realize how much Liana and I had in common, just like from music and stuff like that. Like I felt like we could be best friends just through the conversation. And it was like, please come back and have a conversation with me. No, but it was funny because like she was Liana. I mean, they were very expressive about how connecting through Twitter was a way that we wouldn't have been able to connect with each other in a way that I've gotten guests on the podcast via DMs on Twitter that I probably wouldn't have been able to connect with in the first place if it wasn't for something like Twitter.
I've gotten work from random Twitter DMs. It's pretty great, especially from this side of the world. It's hard to make comics without the random Twitter DM on the odd occasion.
Yeah, that was a very bleak day when everyone was like, Twitter's gonna go away, it's just gonna disappear. And I was like, no, my livelihood. Because it is, I'm pretty sure like 99.999% of my work comes through it. It's which teaches you that you should not rely on single platforms because they are not there for you. They are owned by terrible people at the end of the day who can destroy them at a whim.
Yep.
So
that's what someone said to me. I mean, I work in marketing and I'm a creative director by day, and I do websites and things like that. And someone's like, oh, I don't need a website. I have a Facebook page. And I'm like, I don't just create something to send someone somewhere to something. It doesn't have to be your own platform, your own website, just somewhere else other than that. So that if something like Facebook implodes or they take it down, you have somewhere to send your customers or the people trying to follow you. It's scary how quickly something like that could back up on you and shut down. It's crazy.
I think we've
on
just
the topic of Liana, I would just like to brag about the wonderful retailer incentive cover that they did for us. It is gorgeous, and highly recommend you pick that up if you're thinking about picking up Death Drop.
Again, same thing when I was like, oh my gosh, the worlds collide, and things that I guessed on the podcast, because I can now tell people that we did this episode, but also that Liana did a cover for the book as well, which is awesome.
Yeah, Liana and I have been in a Discord together for like years, and we met for the first time at New York last year, and it was literally just like us hugging for several minutes going, you're real.
That's absolutely perfect. Oh gosh, that's it. And that's connections like that, and also being able to hug each other, something we haven't been able to do for a number of years too.
Well, listen, I had to hand her money. I had to hand the money in person for this cover because of payment issues. I don't know. I handed them a wad of cash because I was like, wait, I can just give you money in person.
Did you walk? You didn't walk in with a briefcase or the handcuffs to your hand to the briefcase so you can protect yourself. You open it up on their table, and you're like, here you go. So Death Drop. Let's talk Death Drop. So Death Drop is a hitman turned drag queen. I don't want to read the entire solicitation because I hate reading a bunch of stuff on the podcast because I usually screw it all up. But David, why don't you give us the synopsis of what you explain to people what Death Drop is?
A hitman turned drag queen enters a race against time to find their missing drag sister as a rash of mysterious deaths and disappearances sweeps across the city's queer districts. And the more Death Drop delves into this, the more she feels that the specter of her assassin mentor is haunting her every step.
And I was able to read the first issue a couple of times, which it's beautiful. First of all, I'll tell you guys both that much. That's beautiful. The second thing is it's I think needed. If that makes any sense. Why do you both think this comic book is needed to be on the market right now?
Well, I definitely didn't. The timing is kind of a coincidence. Drag is sort of really got a huge space in the public consciousness at the moment that it didn't when I started writing this. And I don't know that it's needed so much as it just happened to be at the right time. And I hope it makes as much of an impact as it possibly can.
And it's releasing in the middle of Pride Month too. Was that planned?
100%.
That was planned.
I was gonna say, I hope that was planned. that would have been very, very, very coincidental. So we think we're just gonna do June 14th. That sounds about right, right?
Anything else happening then? I don't think so. Oh.
It's like I said, I wanted to bring it back to the fact that Alex, it's a stunning looking book as well written, David. But the book itself, I found myself reading it once, going through and just visually looking at it the second time, and then reading it, opening back up and reading the bubbles again the third time. And I just want to, I don't want to, pat you on the back too much here, but it's a beautifully drawn book.
Oh gosh, thank you very much. Well, that's good to hear that you sort of like whiz through it quickly the first time. I know it's like it's heartbreaking because it's like, oh my god, how long it took. But no, it's reassuring to that extent. It's like, oh good, it's doing its job as a sort of like storytelling thing. But no, I mean it's been lots of fun because obviously it's sort of these two very different flavors going on, because we've got this sort of like dark gritty mystery, but then the sort of like campy high aesthetics of drag, and it's just been like, I don't know, really fun mixing those together. So I've been having a good time.
It does have that. I believe like the hitman turned drag queen part of it too is both a symbol of power in this side of a hitman, but also being a vulnerable outsider in a sense to most people who don't know much about the drag community. And so there's that balance as well. So like having a little dark grittiness and the bubbly part of it, having all of that two sides of things is great through the whole comic book.
Absolutely. And I think like a lot of times in popular media at the moment, queer stories are only ever allowed to be like bright and happy all the time, and that's not necessarily like the stories that I like to consume. So I wrote Death Drop as the kind of thing that I would want to read as a queer reader, and I hope it has broader appeal than that. But that's kind of where all this came from. I was reading things that I was like, oh well, like it's okay to have your queer characters get edgy and dangerous, and it's okay to have bad things happen to them,
or to be bad people.
Yeah, love that.
I thought the queer community altogether was all just bubbly and hearts and rainbows and shininess. That's what I thought. No, is that not true?
Listen, at least they're not Nottingham bad. Like they're flawed for sure, but it's nowhere near Nottingham levels of blood and sadness.
Although I don't know if I'd be like too sad if we all decided to rise up and kill the rich. I don't know.
You just got to make sure, like everybody benefits from that. And you don't just end up with another like class war down the line, because otherwise you're missing the point.
Yeah.
The other part I thought too was kind of funny that the name, you could have just called it Death Drop. And it would, honestly, that name alone, I think that anybody looking through Previews World without even seeing the comic book at all or anything like that would have been like, what the hell is this? I need this in my life. And then the Drag Assassin, but the other that colon, Drag Assassin part to me made me go, as I'm straight male who grew up in a Christian household, who just was told completely different things that I have decided to take upon myself as a 37-year-old adult. It is drag. I would never have connected a hitman as a drag queen. You know what I mean? Like, so like seeing that as well made me go, oh, this is amazing, because it's something new and something different and something that's opened my eyes a little bit more, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and I think that there's a real like corollary between that retired assassin trope and burying trauma versus dealing with it, which queer people love to do. So yeah, that's kind of where I was at when I was sort of brainstorming this out. And I hope it comes across. It's got a lot going on, and that's like the lot going on starts in the title. So
Well, like I said, to me it was just like, oh, Death Drop. That's not, first of all, it sounds like a metal band, right? I mean, Death Drop is like a metal band, but like the idea of being a drag assassin was pretty cool too, in my opinion. And how did this end up at Scout? I mean, obviously you have other books are at Mad Cave. Is there a reason behind the Scout connection to this, or?
I think it was just the timing, the circumstance. At the time I was pitching this around, Mad Cave was not accepting creator-owned submissions. That being said, Scout also gives us a lot of freedom as to how we do this, and I think that was really important to me, was to have that creative freedom and not necessarily having as much editorial oversight, just in terms of story and theme and message. And they do a lot in terms of making sure our book looks right and there's no spelling and grammar mistakes, but they leave the creative stuff to us, and that's kind of really freeing.
100%. I mean, I have no quorums on where it ends up, as long as it ends up on a shelf, in my opinion. But it also helps that I've had this conversation with multiple people who have multiple books at multiple different. I mean, Cullen Bunn was on the podcast, and he had books at like 17 different publishers. I mean, they're all on the shelf at the same time because he's got 40 books going on at the same time.
That man can write. The Stephen King of comic books.
But
and that's a comic book landscape that includes Joe Hill, but I still feel like Cullen Bunn is the Stephen King of comic books, because the man can write real fast.
But you having books like Monomyth out at Mad Cave right at the same time as Death Drop allows two different publishers to help market and get this book on the market and have it on the shelf.
Yeah.
That's a little bit harder for. I mean, obviously you also have Nottingham stuff too. So having 3 titles at one publisher would be a little bit harder. We just mentioned the same thing about having your information on one social media platform, having all of your books at one publisher too. If Mad Cave decided to say, we're all done, not that they are, but say they're all done, then you would also be in kind of a quorum there.
Look, I've already had that level of publisher stress once in the last 12 months. I don't need it again. So please don't put that thought into the universe, because I love Mad Cave.
Yes.
And we've got so much more to do, me and Mad Cave. So
no,
yeah,
absolutely. Mad Cave should be around forever. Again, we talked before we were recording. I get free stuff in the mail that you don't get. So like these tarot cards.
Yeah.
But for monomyth. But no, it was just that I think it was James Tynion was the same thing. He said that having all of this stuff at Dark Horse and it has some stuff at Image and stuff at Boom was multiple places to have the different things. You can market the books all at the same time. They can end up on the shelf at the same time, and you have 4 different publishers to help you put this out to the market. And having Scout be another person in your your deck of cards helps you promote the book at another level.
Absolutely.
That's pretty cool. And so what else do you think this book people should be looking for when they get out of this book? Like, what else do you want people to get out of this book when they read it?
That same look, my hope is that same kind of feeling that I got reading Batwoman Elegy, where I was like, oh, this is where I was meant to be this entire time, reading comics, which is wild. I want people to get that feeling out of it. I want people to I hope that people find comics through Death Drop. That would be extremely gratifying.
Is this a 5-issue series? I forget.
5 issues, yeah.
5, and is that 5 issues? Like, there's not going to be a hope for more, or is this just going to be 5 issues and done altogether?
The hope is purely in my heart for now.
which is good. It's fine. That's absolutely fine. It's not like I'll tell you right now, I'm a big fan of miniseries because I can complete them. You can buy them in trade. You can hold the whole collection. I'm a big fan of miniseries, but I'm not opposed to the idea of a continuation of that miniseries with the volume 2 and so on and so forth if it gets to that point.
I think Death Drop is a self-contained story. I don't think that necessarily has to end with 5. Ideally, I'd like it to be 10, but who knows? Let's hopefully people turn out, because that would be the most gratifying thing. And then we keep doing this. Alex and I haven't really discussed the prospect of more in any depth, and I've just been incepting it into their brain across the several podcasts that we've done.
Oh no, the idea is in there. And I'm like, God, I just need to message David about what I'm doing.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a lot.
Yeah,
and we also need to finish issue 5, because that's the thing.
True.
Well, yes, it is funny because there's a portion of these podcast episodes that I do with people who either have the book out and there's 2 or 3 issues on the market, or this is pre-release, and it's funny asking, is this more when the first issue hasn't even hit the shelves yet?
Yeah.
You haven't even sold. I mean, FOC has passed, I believe, right, by this time.
Yeah, it has.
For it. However, Scout is an amazing company in that sense that if your LCS did not end up getting it, or did not end up getting enough copies because you didn't hear about it till this podcast, have them call up or email, or however they contact, fax Scout direct, and they can actually buy it from Scout and have it shipped to their store in that sense as well too. So that's one of those things that Scout does, which is pretty cool, that other publishers may not do. But I knew that. I found that out. Jonathan Hedrick, who wrote The Recount and Quicksand, was on there, and he was telling me that if you didn't get it, you can get it. Just call up Scout.
Keep name dropping really cool people.
Well, I'll tell you what. So I didn't want to say my birthday is on. This episode will come out on Wednesday, the 17th of May. My birthday is on May 15th, which is Monday. And so for myself, for my birthday, I bought this from Scout's website, which if you're listening to it, you can't hear it, but it's a printer panel from the Recount. It's page 20 of the Coffees and Comics variant, whatever. And it's a black printer panel, plate, I should say, not panel, plate on that. And I was like, this is badass. I need to have this in my life because Jonathan also is a great person. Yes, you're right. I'm just gonna name drop everybody. Want to go through the whole list of people who've been on the podcast?
We'll be here for however long it takes you to get through 107 names, and plus guests. Extra guests.
You have to watch to get David's actual answer, because he's gonna give thumbs up or thumbs down. They're not gonna actually say it out loud, so you have to watch. No, but that's it's been great, and I only get people who I want to talk to. That's the thing, and the benefit about running your own podcast is the fact that you only talk to people who either you like the books and you might not like the people, but you might like the books, or you like the people and you don't like the books. Either way, one of those things. But for you two, I like
now
both.
you have to tell us which is which.
Yeah. Ooh, I don't know
Every
which is
guest.
worse.
I won't name drop anybody, that's for sure. However, my LCS owner asked me once who was the most difficult person to talk to, so on and so forth. And I gave him he goes, I'm going to guess. And he gave a name and it was the correct one. It was just one of those ones where you'd ask a question and the answer would go some weird random tangent on something that never even answered the question. And I was at the end of it, I was like, I don't even know what the hell we talked about the entire time. I guess we talked about something. And at the end of it, I was like, I'm so looking forward to that episode too. And it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to, but whatever. It comes, it happens. But yeah, so Death Drop.
The magic is show business.
Although I'm thinking about that and I'm like, wow, that sounds an awful lot like the last podcast we did.
We were a bit chaotic. I feel like we're
was...
more tame this morning than we were.
You've said everything. You don't need to see it. Listen to all the other podcasts. Don't worry about ours. Just listen to everybody else. No, but I saw that. I mean, I saw the tweet Alex put out about being on all these podcasts, and everybody was like, great, great places to be. It's always a great community to be a part of, the comic book podcasting. That's the same thing with you mentioned earlier about connecting with people via Twitter. Is the same thing we have here at the podcast as well, so which is pretty cool. But yeah, Death Drop is coming out here on June 14th. Like I said, smack dab in the middle of Pride Month, which is excellent. You can pick it up at your LCS. You can go to Scout's website. Are you guys conning, conventions, things like that as well, or are signings?
I will be at Oz Comic Con Adelaide, June 3rd and 4th, or 4th and 5th, something like that. And then the next weekend, I'll be at Oz Comic Con Melbourne. Then I got a bunch of stuff peppered sort of later in the year, and hopefully New York Comic Con to round it all out. But yeah, I haven't really lined up a signing. I'm hoping I get my comps before Oz Comic Con Melbourne so I can do a big thing about it there. Otherwise, we'll see.
Yeah, there was some discussions of some things with Melissa that sounded pretty fun, but I don't know. I think we're maybe waiting for the trade on that. But
yeah, very much probably that. Hopefully I'll be closer to your side of the world, Alex, when that happens.
Yeah, well, that would make things a lot easier.
Totally would.
And oh my god, scheduling, think how easy scheduling podcasts is going to be, David. But
the dream.
In terms of like cons and stuff, I'm doing a few. So there's a couple of small ones in the summer. So we've got South London Comic and Zine Fair, which is the middle of July. So might have some copies for that. Don't know. Then there's
I hope you have copies by then.
Yeah. Pridecraft, which is in Bristol in September. Then there's also in September, there's the Lakes International Comics an art fair. I never get the names of these things right. Which is off in the Lake District, which is going to be very pretty. And then there's Thought Bubble, which is sort of like our main sort of like indie comic convention in November, which is always a load of fun.
Which randomly I heard has nice bathrooms.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's like every year there'd always be this photo that looks like it's like in some sort of like Renaissance, like I don't know what the fuck, of just like all of comics like royalty sort of like posing on this massive sofa, and it's like, what? It can't be this big. And I went in there and it really is that big, and it's hilarious because you go into the women's and it's this just like very box standard fog, but the men's is literally like you could probably get lost and die in there. It's like you need a piece of string to find your way back. You might encounter a minotaur, I don't know, but
dropping breadcrumbs on the way in just to make sure you find your way back.
It's pretty wild.
I feel
would
like
love
that's
to know the story behind it.
I feel like that Thought Bubble needs like their like subtitle should be like the home of the beautiful bathroom or something like that. Come join Thought Bubble. But that's awesome. I'm glad conventions are back and people can go out there and see people, because it is, I mean, writing comic books and drawing comic books is something, what you guys do for a living. But however, it also is a way to make a living, is going to cons and meeting your fans and signing out comic books and selling some of your stuff as well. So I'm hoping people turn out for that stuff as well. And yeah, I mean, June 14th is the first issue, and then there's the Scout does that first window, right? You don't have your second issue doesn't come out for 3 months, right? Is that true?
So yeah, our second issue it hasn't even been solicited yet. So yeah, I think it's just a month off, and then the next month is back on again.
Okay.
Just so that the FOC can tick over before they have to cut off the orders for issue 2. Yeah.
I actually like that. Yeah, I was talking to my LCS owner about that, and that the idea of allowing him some time to see how issue 1 did. If he sells out of it, he wants to pick up a bunch of them. If he doesn't, so on and so forth. I feel like it makes sense to let that first issue wait a little bit.
Yeah, to actually give people a chance to read it and stuff like that. Because I know it's weird. I don't know a lot about the inside of comics, which I've been learning a lot about very rapidly over the course of this year. But I was like, I'm doing variant covers for a IDW original series, Catfight, and it's sort of like the first issue of that, like, hasn't even come out yet, but it's like issue 3 is about to come out into previews, and it's like, but we're just trying to sell this on some covers, some very pretty covers. They've got like an amazing roundup of people working on them, and like a synopsis, which just seems like a wild business model. But
yes,
that's
well, I mean,
comics.
IDW, I believe in the previews catalog, IDW has multiple comic books that just have pictures that says, cover coming soon.
Oh yeah,
and
I saw
just
that
like,
as well.
like, okay, interesting. Speaking of a Catfight, Heather Antos, I believe, is editing Catfight, is she not?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, she's amazing. Like her and Vanessa Reel, who I don't think is really on social media, but it's just like they are so quick with answers and supplying things, and it's like, wow, they are amazing to work with. So,
yes. But excuse me, grab Drag Assassin. To be Death Drop Drag Assassin anywhere you can buy comic books, because I highly recommend it. You two worked wonderful on this. I'm very glad. And sometimes the writer doesn't usually work very well. Like, not sometimes. Sometimes you read a book and you're like, this book was written very beautifully. Art was okay. Opposite, so on and so forth. I think the partnership of the two of you have made a great comic book for people to purchase, as well as it has a great time to release during Pride Month, and I hope everybody picks that up. And if your LCS missed out on it for some weird reason, they didn't hear about it or didn't order enough copies, contact Scout directly, because they can get some copies out to you. Other than that, I mean, obviously you mentioned, David, at the very beginning that you have Monomyth out there right now, 3rd volume in Nottingham. That's the stuff you're working on right now, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Monomyth. I'm done with Monomyth. I think the last issue is all that we're waiting on in terms of art. So yeah, I started working on that in October 2021. So that's all done from my end. And it's coming out monthly. Issue 2 is coming up in June. I think it's the week after Death Drop. And then the week after that is Tales from Nottingham #5, and also Tales from Nottingham #1 second printing.
There you go. That's the other thing about the month wait for Scout, is the fact that if there is a second printing of Death Drop, usually that hits at the same time the second issue comes out, which is awesome in that sense too. Yeah, June 21st. Yeah, it's a week after for Monomyth #2 out there as well. And Alex, are you working on anything else but Death Drop right now, or is this what you're working on?
I've got a few more sort of like variant.
Dangerous question.
Yeah, I don't know. Something weird happened to my email inbox towards the end of last year, and a lot of things like came in. So I think I've got a variant cover for Rogue Sun coming up from Image. Something with Z2.
Nice.
And then there's like a 270-page graphic novel that I'm cracking on with, which is not my insane personal project. That's the sort of thing that came in quite recently.
Okay.
That's been a bit like, ooh. So yeah, just cracking on with that while sort of like wrapping off on the last issue and a bit of Death Drop. Which yeah, it's exciting times.
Yes, it is. I want to see more stuff from both of you, so I'm very, very excited to see people get this in their hands. I'm really excited for all that stuff. And where can people find you on social media, both of you guys?
I'm at David T. Hazan on Instagram and Twitter, and davidhazan.com is my website.
Unfortunately, my synergy is not as on point as David's. So my website, where you can get links to everything else, is cargocollective.com/AlexMoreIllustration. If you just Google Alex More Illustration, it will come up. On Twitter, I am at Not Another Alex. On Instagram, I am Alex More Illustration. And I think on Substack, which I started recently, is alexmoreillustration.substack.com. But there's sort of links to everything.
Yes,
everything sort of links to each other. So if you find one, you can find all the places where I just scream online into the ether. Yes.
Well, I really appreciate you both coming on and joining us to talk about a Death Drop, Drag Assassin, and so much more. Keep up the great work. Like I said, hopefully we'll have you back on at some point in the future to talk other projects. But until then, David, get some sleep. I don't know when you actually get a chance to sleep.
Yeah.
And I hope you recover from this podcast-a-thon you've been on well, and you can get back to work on your actual writing at some point.
Or maybe having a weekend. I don't know. Did we do those?
I planned one in sometime in June, towards the end of June. I'll do that. I'll have a weekend. Until then.
Yes, thank you so much, both of you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.